It was only a matter of time. Last week, a report from the Wall Street Journal claimed that Nintendo will be releasing a new version of the Switch in the latter half of 2019 to, quote, maintain sales momentum, end quote. Yes, it is a rumor, but if it's coming from the Wall Street Journal, it definitely has some weight to it. That, and it really isn't hard to believe. Console upgrades and modifications are the norm in this day and age. Wait, scratch that. They've been a thing since before the NES top loader. The question regarding the Nintendo Switch is, what kind of a new version will this be? Will it have increased power, or will it have simple modifications for increased practicality? Both of these options have their merits, but they also present different problems for the Nintendo Switch moving forward. So let's get right into it. As of now, we're living in a very strange console generation. In 2012, the Wii U was the one to kickstart the 8th console gen that we're currently living in, and then the PS4 and Xbox One came around a year later to define it. But that wasn't all. PlayStation and Xbox decided that console generations weren't confusing enough, so they released mid-generation upgrades, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, mainly to ride the momentum of rising 4K TV sales. But if you look at the Xbox One X specifications, it's practically a new console. Yeah, we don't get it. Then the Nintendo Switch came along, and most still consider it an 8th generation console anyway, mainly just to avoid confusion. Right now, we are creeping up on the 5th year anniversary of the PS4 and Xbox One, and console generations usually last for 5 years. The exception being the last one, which lasted about 7 for the PS3 and Wii, and a whopping 8 for the Xbox 360. The extended length of this generation most likely had something to do with the recession that occurred during that time. Still, that generation was the exception, and most people are anticipating the next generation of consoles to arrive sooner rather than later. Xbox's Phil Spencer had already mentioned that they're working on a new console, codenamed Scarlet, and while PlayStation's CEO John Cordera has stated that PS5 is 3 years off, that doesn't mean Xbox Scarlet can't release before then. So what does this all have to do with the Nintendo Switch? Well, if the PS5 and/or Xbox Scarlet come out in the middle of the Switch's life, then that's more competition Nintendo faces. Now, if you're thinking that PlayStation and Xbox aren't competitors for Nintendo hardware, you're not completely wrong. The Switch's unique selling point is its portability, something the other two don't have, but they're all still game consoles, thus making them still competitors. And the Wall Street Journal report claims that this new version of the Nintendo Switch would be to help maintain sales momentum. This could mean to maintain sales momentum during the release of newer and more powerful hardware from the competitors, begging the question, is the new version of the Nintendo Switch a more powerful revision similar to the PS4 Pro or Xbox One X? Of course, it wouldn't be unlike Nintendo to make revisions of their hardware, especially handheld ones. Look at the Game Boy Advance to the Game Boy Advance SP. Hell, look at all these versions of the Nintendo DS. Their most recent example being the Nintendo 3DS's upgrade, that being the new Nintendo 3DS, offering more power for exclusive games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, Binding of Isaac, and noticeable improvements to Hyrule and Fire Emblem Warriors. Yeah, the exclusive games for the new 3DS didn't pan out too far, but at least we have that nipple to control the camera. This has us wondering if Nintendo could pull off the same thing with a Nintendo Switch Pro, or a new Nintendo Switch, or a new Nintendo Switch XL and Knuckles featuring a new Funky Mode and Dante from the Devil May Cry series. Well, yes and no. Many people have assumed that a Nintendo Switch Pro would fix the lack of third-party support on the console. After all, a more powerful Switch would mean an increased likelihood of more third-party games, wouldn't it? Sure, but then lies the problem of dividing your player base. What's important to know about the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X is that they don't have exclusive games. Every game released on those platforms needs to be able to run on both the standard models and the Pro ones. If Nintendo wants to avoid outrage with a Switch Pro, the same rules would have to apply to them. Sorry, you can't have a dream port of Red Dead Redemption 2 on a Switch Pro without it being able to run on the standard Switch as well. While the new Nintendo 3DS has a fair selection of exclusive games, very few of them are system sellers. We would think that if a Switch Pro would contain exclusive titles, from third parties especially, then that's over 20 million current Switch owners that would be upset. But say a Switch Pro does come out, and it is more powerful, but without the exclusive games. Maybe third parties would be more willing to develop for the Switch, as long as the Pro version of their games look and run good. But that would also mean the standard version of their games would look all the more worse. That said, the main purpose of this Switch Pro, in theory, would be to accommodate 4K TV owners. Imagine Breath of the Wild, upscaled to 4K with some glorious HDR. Wouldn't that look amazing? Of course, we say upscaled because not even the PS4 Pro runs most games at native 4K resolutions. Games would most likely run at least in 1440p upscaled to 4K. It certainly would look better than 720p upscaled to 1080. Whether or not 4K gaming is Nintendo's priority, the growing 4K TV market is something they must be taking notice of. However, what if this new version of the Switch isn't an upgrade in power, but in design? Like we stated earlier, modifications of game consoles are nothing new, especially for handhelds. The Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Advance SP was probably the single greatest upgrade to any handheld system, offering a backlit screen, thank God. However, the Nintendo DS to DS Lite was also a well-needed evolution of that chunky brick of a system. Then came the DSi and DSi XL, featuring a camera but no Game Boy Advance backwards compatibility. What gives? None of these upgrades improved the power of the consoles, but they made practical redesigns that improved build quality and comfort. With that in mind, what could Nintendo possibly improve on the Nintendo Switch? What jumps out at us the most is the screen. I mean, it is the thing we look at the most on the system. It's a fine LCD display, no doubt, but it only goes up to 720p. Either Nintendo could boost the resolution of the screen up to 1080p, or replace the type of screen from an LCD to even an OLED. Though the rumors from Wall Street Journal suggest that this won't be the case. If that's true, then it's too bad, as an OLED replacement would make the screen look better, even if the resolution was still 720p, and it would most importantly save the battery life. The Switch's battery lasts roughly 3 hours if you're playing a demanding game, so any effort made to improve the battery would be great. Matter of fact, why not include a bigger battery in this new Switch? Oh, and while we're on the topic of bigger things, how about bigger storage? 32GB is already too small, so 64GB would be an improvement, but 128GB would be the most ideal in this situation. If there's one thing you're not going to see change with this new Nintendo Switch though, it's the size of the system. You're not gonna get a Switch Mini, and you're not gonna get a Switch XL, all thanks to those detachable Joy-Cons. The current Switch's size is perfect, and it's meant to work with the attachments for the Joy-Cons. You mess with the size of the Switch, and you just mess up everything. Unless you released Mini or XL Joy-Cons, but come on, who really wants that? In conclusion, do we really need a Switch Pro? If speculation is to be believed, and the next generation of consoles arrive in the next 1 or 2 years, then Nintendo needs to do something to continue making the Switch look like a hot product and not yesterday's news. They've done it before, so they can definitely do it again. Doesn't necessarily need to be more powerful though, not exactly, just more practical. Make the screen better, increase the battery life, and for God's sakes, include more storage. Games are not getting any smaller, and 32GB just won't cut it these days. But we'd like to know what you think this new version of the Switch should include. More power? More storage? A better screen? Let us know in the comment section below or on Twitter at Common Realm. Be sure to hit that thumbs up if you liked this video, and if you are new, subscribe and click that notification bell to know when we upload another video about the Nintendo Switch and other Nintendo franchises. We'd also like to thank our awesome patrons, including royal producer Kenyatta Ali, for all their contributions to the realm. Visit patreon.com/commonrealm to find out how you can join the ranks in exchange for some awesome perks. In the meantime, girls and guys, we will see you again soon on the Commonwealth Realm.